Tulsa, Oklahoma grassroots Ron Paul campaign office has written a recent article, How to Get Ron Paul Elected. And it's all about how, as great as the general vote is, the popular vote, the real fight is for the delegates. A lot of those delegate spots, especially at the local and state level, are open, and they're just waiting for someone to show up, sign their name, and become that delegate, become a Ron Paul delegate. And with more on that now, we turn to Kay Beach. She's a full-time activist, partially associated with the website ronpaulok.com, also a radio host at axiomforliberty.com, and has been active in the 2008 and 2012 Ron Paul campaigns. Kay, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we were talking beforehand about how there's the popular vote, that's one thing, but the real fight for the presidential elections, or any election for that matter, is at the delegate level. That happens at the local and state level.
That's right. And in fact, I mean, of course, you should be out there voting at your primary. But as we all know, in order for Ron Paul to win the presidency, he has to get the nomination from the GOP. What a lot of people don't know is how does he get that nomination? And this is where the delegates come in. And this is where the grassroots Ron Paul supporters are absolutely critical, because it's the delegates that vote for the nomination for GOP. And if he doesn't get that, he can't be president. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, is the delegate process.
Yeah, and of course, we know, just for starters, here in the 2012 primary, Iowa, he got nearly as many delegates, possibly even more, due to the actual process that goes on then, Romney or Santorum. And so it's really not about who the media anoints as the nominee to be, Mitt Romney, although that does have an important effect, but it's really all about the delegates. So let's focus on some of the details then.
Well, and I'm most familiar with Oklahoma. These rules and the processes, even the terminology, will vary somewhat from state to state. The most important thing you can do, of course, is get plugged in with other Ron Paul supporters on the meetup. Like, go to meetup.com and find the other Ron Paul supporters in your state, and we help each other out. But in Oklahoma, for example, and this is true in every state, the first thing is you have to be registered to vote, of course. In Oklahoma, for example, because it's a closed primary state, you have to be registered to vote, and you have to be registered Republican. Only Republicans can vote for other Republicans in Oklahoma's primaries. It's not that way in every state. So the very first order of business, of course, is being registered to vote. And then the very next thing is to find out what precinct you're in. You can look on your voter card, or you can call your county election board and find out, it's a number, what precinct you're in. And your precinct is the locality right around you. In other words, when you go to the polls to vote, the people that are there voting at that same polling place, those are people in your precinct. So it's a neighborhood size, usually not more than 2,000 people are in a precinct. That's what a precinct is. So after you are registered to vote and you have all that taken care of, you find out what precinct you're in, and then you want to find out, and this is the critical part, and what I want to say right now, I want to stress this, it is the delegates that choose the nominee. So, of course, Ron Paul has to have delegates. The first step in that process is going and finding out when your precinct meeting is, your GOP precinct meeting is. In Oklahoma, these precinct meetings are starting the first week in February. How do you find these things out? Well, of course, you can go to your GOP website, but you want to go to meetup.com, get connected with Ron Paul people, connect with the national campaign for Ron Paul. In Oklahoma, you can go to ronpaulok.com. We'll be posting all of that information there. So get registered to vote. Make sure you're registered Republican. Find out your precinct. Then you find out where and when your precinct meetings are. And the most important thing of all, 90% of winning in politics is about showing up, behind in the seat. So you have to be there, and you have to talk to every Ron Paul supporter you know and let them know about the delegate process so we can get him elected to president.
Now let's talk scenario here, because there's already been bantering about, could there be a brokered convention? What would happen if Ron Paul, or any other candidate for that matter, stayed in the race even when they weren't leading outright with delegates? What would we see happen in the Tampa National Republican Convention?
Well, as I understand it, there's been some rule changes with the GOP in how they apportion delegates. I don't think it's a bad rule change. It seems like a fair rule change. But this rule change, which actually apportions delegate by percentage, rather than winner take all, makes it a lot more likely that it could be a brokered convention.
Right.
And in any event, but especially in the event of a brokered convention, how many delegates Ron Paul has there is everything. It couldn't be more crucial. And even more so now since we've had these rule changes.
So, Kay, what kind of scenarios could we see at the brokered convention? Would it be Ron Paul vying for a vice presidential slot? Would it be arguing over policy and platform positions? Or what's happened in the past at brokered conventions?
As I understand it, it is a huge negotiating process. It's been described to me as part horse trading. And this is a situation I think most Ron Paul people will understand how critical it is for them to be there. The one thing you can say about the Ron Paul people, I know for a fact, those guys aren't going to trade away anything. They're not going to trade away their vote. They're not going to negotiate and sell out on Ron Paul, which is one thing I fear that may make the battle for the delegates a little bit harder this time around, because the brokered convention is a distinct possibility. So yes, policy positions, for vice president, whatever. I'm sure all of those things are on the table, and there'll be a whole lot of trading going on.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch. One thing is for sure, Ron Paul has had himself heard. The people now know who he is and generally what he stands for, and they're still learning more. So in that sense, it's a victory just by competing. And for the delegates, showing up is a victory by competing as well. So thanks for giving us the scoop on that, and we'll speak to you again in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.